So I think from this whole society level, I've been thinking about the same thing as Melissa and you all. I'm thinking, it's really not helpful to play the blaming game. As a whole earth, as a whole world, we need all united together to really fight this, to fight with time, to find the resources, to really help out and survive together with the situation. But then as individuals, day-to-day life here in America as Asians facing all these challenges, coronavirus, xenophobia, and a lot of real life stressors, what we can do to really cope with it. Like what Melissa talked about earlier, right? With all this, we notice different generations are having different worries. Even I know within Asian populations, someone really, there are different camps. There's some people really feels like this is wrong. We need all work together, but there are other Asians are playing different blame games.
I think during this time, it's so easy, like what Melissa was saying, to put the blame on someone. It's so easy to put a scapegoat on someone. I think we have to come to terms with the point that during this difficult time, it's very difficult for everyone. And just kind of think of that people are trying their best, whatever best looks like. And we have to be mindful of that. So I think it's trying to approach people with more compassion, being aware of how we react to situations, being aware of like our own emotional response to things, I think is something that would help with making us see clearer in terms of how we can make sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe different audience have different experience. Some people may just hear from it, hear about it. Some people may have really close experience, and some people even have traumatic like experience after have some things happen to them or their family. So I think it possibly helpful for us to share some experience either we have personally or we heard of, and then we can talk about coping.
So I personally, I don't know if I should call it racial discrimination, but it's more like I went back to China so that's actually an interesting story to tell. I actually went back to China in late January. Actually, the day I went back to China, Wuhan was locked down. But if I knew that, I wouldn't have come back. I didn't know it was that serious. But I was already there in China. So basically, for my entire time in China, it was 2 weeks. I was in a lockdown, right? So I was quarantined for 2 weeks.
So you were in Wuhan? Right.
I was not in Wuhan. I was in Ningbo. Okay. But basically, after Wuhan lockdown,
you wouldn't be back.
Yeah,
if you were in Wuhan, you'd be stuck.
That's right. But basically, everywhere else in China also pretty much started the quarantine mode. So I was not able to meet all of my relatives, not any of my friends. We were stuck in home for 2 weeks, basically quarantining ourselves for 2 weeks. And then I came back, our whole family came back just a couple hours before the travel ban came back to the US, because otherwise we were all frightened. We all had to work and everything. So we just changed our flights, flew back just a couple hours before travel ban. After arriving here, we were quarantined for another 2 weeks, obviously, because everybody who came back from China had to be quarantined. So that was another 2 weeks. So that brought us to mid-February. And then I probably went back to work for maybe 1 or 2 weeks maximum. And then we started shelter at home. So basically my whole 2020 was in quarantine mode. So I was a little bit positive. I think I shouldn't have been affected coronavirus, because for my entire time in the US, I was pretty much in quarantine. And I only went back to office for a couple of weeks, even if they have to do contact tracing. It was just that many coworkers that I was in contact with. So I think even though I I felt like I was going to cough a little bit. I was comforting myself. I shouldn't have caught coronavirus. It's probably just regular cough. But whenever I when I came back to the US, I had a couple appointments. Just being a good citizen, I told them I just came back from China. And everybody just said, how about we postpone it, for 2 weeks? After 14 days, let's do it. So I'm not sure if it's about Chinese specifically, but I think obviously I want to give other people peace of mind, and other people were also kind of mindful about the fact that I just came back from China. We all kind of did not want to meet or contact. And obviously every time I told the story in the virtual meeting, and there was like a 2-day workshop where I was supposed to fly to New York, and I was the only person who was not in person there. I had to do it through VC. Everybody was understanding. But I think I feel like everybody also was very happy that, glad that she didn't fly here to sit here and meet in person. And after I went back to the office, we were also nobody I was in contact was kind of afraid of me. But we were talking about, this other person kept coughing in the meeting, and I was wondering if she got coronavirus and if I got coronavirus. So everybody was very worried about anybody around them who was a little bit of sick. So that's kind of one example about kind of everybody mindful about, everybody and anybody around them that was a little bit of sick. The other example is more about Asian stereotype. Where it's not about me, but in a meeting, somebody talked about what they have experienced in the interview process. So that person is our coworker right now, but what she said that when she came for interview, the receptionist, just looked at her saying, are you coming here for contingent worker interview, for contractor interview? And, they hire a lot of Asian people here to be contractors. So that person, my coworker, obviously passed the interview and the full-time employee at the company, but just what the receptionist said is very revealing of what they think about Chinese people. And that goes to the same for Hispanic people as well. They think of a lot of Hispanic people are in facilities or they're restaurant workers. And there are a lot of coworkers of Hispanic roots around us as well. So I think a lot of minorities are facing these stereotypes at workplace, and there's pre-assumptions about how you're going to talk. There's pre-assumptions about your opinions. Just like looking at your face, a lot of the hidden feelings would have been already revealed. So that's why we need to go through the what was the training that I have just gone through? Unconscious bias training. And then a lot of the good points that brought up in the trainings, like who are you going to pick when you're to sit with in an airplane? And there's like an Asian girl, there's a white person, there's an elderly. So I feel like, wow, it's actually very revealing. I would just pick that Asian person to sit right next to because I feel most relevant to her. So not specific to Asians, but I think a lot of minority groups are facing the same challenge. I think one advice I would say to how to cope with it is, we can't change people. People's mind is probably the hardest to change, but we can just do the best of ourselves. Let's just be ourselves and not be anybody else. And if we happen to fit into some of the stereotype of Asian people, that is okay, because we're who we are. We're a product of our culture. There's nothing to be ashamed of. But one thing that we really need to keep in mind is be confident and just be brave about who we are. And we can't control other people. So let's just do the best we can.
Mm-hmm. I like that, like radical acceptance. Control what we are able to control, work on what we are able to work on, but don't tangle into those things out of our control. But regarding this bias you talk about, just want to mention briefly, I have a colleague who is also a psychologist. His lab is working on implicit bias projects. That's what he studies. And they are working on something, they are doing some research on xenophobia. And hopefully I will be able to interview him after he analyzed the data in about July or August this year. So I'm very curious what they are finding. regarding this topic we're talking about?
I would be very interested to know about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say personally, I have never encountered this many of racism experience around me ever. I think and also across so many areas in my life. So going from my personal friends, my clients, my different professional groups that I'm involved with, and just really, I think really across different circles that I have heard stories that's either from the person who's sharing with me first own experience or something that they heard from people that they know. So some examples of what I have heard I have a client who's saying she got yelled at to go back to her own country and nasty word when fought by her neighbor when she went downstairs to throw out her trash, which was really terrifying for her. And when she was born and raised in the United States. I have heard people from our group, volunteering group, who got purposely coughed at or like map their runny nose and like do this at them because they're Chinese, because she's a Chinese person on subway, just by random person. I have heard people, my adolescent clients, sharing in school how a classmate would joke about, oh, this is a China's virus, or something about a Chinese person, and they're not willing to admit that it was a problem because it was supposed to be funny. And I very recently, I think one of the most experience I personally share was recently I've been calling some grocery stores to ask if they need masks and to try to donate masks. So, and because of that, I've been, trying to find some source of masks. So I have something that I can offer and donate. And most people are really helpful, thankful for what I have to offer. Some people with a little bit weird looks, but nothing vocal, but maybe just like local microaggression. I don't know. And because of what I found, I shared it in a couple of my Facebook public posts about some link that I found that you can purchase a mask with. And I have gotten like some bad comments about those links because like angry faces about how these links shouldn't exist because these masks should go to the medical workers, which I sort of understand. But it still felt just very uncomfortable getting those because I was only sharing resources to folks. And this is not me. This is someone else who was not sharing, but trying to sell a mask on the Facebook group, again, to folks who needs mask. And I woke up once on Facebook and found a lot of nasty comments of that I share with Yishan after she posted, just 5 minutes after she posted. She says like, those are, I forgot the very specific word, but says something like, those are chorus mask. I would rather wear, I forgot what she said. I would rather wear something else.
Right. I was very surprised by those messages you shared because those people feels like, well, China is the root of all this, and the masks there are dangerous. Why are you even thinking about this? Why you're doing this? Just don't do it. We don't need it. Definitely a lot of aggression from different people there post the message. I was very shocked.
And it felt very point towards the person. I mean, the person who post that had a Chinese name, it was pretty clear that she was Chinese. And like just imagining her trying to help out here but getting that message, I think that was still very shocking to me. I have to say that we're in a period that I'm constantly hearing people say, I'm so surprised by the amount and intensity of these comments, even though I'm not surprised. That's what I'm hearing. And I have to say that's what I felt as well. But these are some of the examples of what I have encountered in the past few months.
Yeah, that's very upsetting. I know Melissa also donated quite a lot of masks to the local hospitals, right? Did you encounter anything like mixed reactions from people?
So yeah, and I even posted on my Facebook because my dad is in manufacturing field, so he actually has access to a lot of like directly from manufacturing PPEs, including KN95 masks and everything. And I posted on my Facebook saying, we have these resources, we have these PPEs in case you're interested. And in addition, I'm also donating to hospitals. And I actually get a lot of quite a lot of like requests from my friends, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm so glad that you are doing it because I really need these masks and resources and want to buy some from you because there's so many other they're good ones, they're bad ones. I just don't know how good quality they are. I know there are lots of from China, but the quality of those masks could be varied. So I trust you. So I'm really glad that you're doing this." So all the personal feedback that I've been getting are pretty positive, and all the comments down below are very positive as well. I definitely think there may be also, just as we just discussed, the general public, right? Like the general public are usually are easily swayed and influenced by the opinions that they hear and see, and by the political environment as well. And if I have that kind of friends, I would defriend them if I can. I mean, in an environment like Facebook, we can, if it's you post it in a public place, then obviously you get a lot of different kinds of comments. But I would choose to defriend those people, and I'm pretty sure those people, they don't also know any like Chinese friends personally, and it's very disheartening to see these posts for sure. Like just hearing about you describing it, it's very upsetting to me because, for me, I definitely want to help people. Like I'm not really selling the PPEs for a living or something, or trying to make a profit. All of these are directly from manufacturing and covering the shipping cost. That's all what I'm doing. It is very upsetting to hear those, and but I think at least it's good to me that my friends are welcoming these and are kind of reacting them pretty positively. But if I have friends who are like, I also think that because they're my friend, because they're my friends, so they're nice. My friend, if they have like similar thought to those people who are posting nasty comments, they're probably not going to post these to me. They either didn't talk to me, or they would ask me and maybe ask me about how I think and express how they feel. So I think it still goes back to they only see those media posts, and they just assume bad intent from those people, but they actually never talk to those people and never were friends with them. And just because I also work in the field, I can also share a little bit. Facebook has banned all the mask ads, including selling on Marketplace, including all the ads that are running on all platforms of Facebook. So you should see a lot fewer of those, or none of those. But yeah, I think social media or kind of online social media platform are exactly those places where people post very negative and nasty events. And I think we can do a podcast just about social media itself. You see more negative reactions in your actual real life. And we see the same things happening in Weibo, in Himalaya, everywhere, in Chinese platforms. You see people posting these comments about Chinese people. So if you just read these posts, it's really kind of frustrating to see. So maybe a good idea is block those things a little bit and just see something else, just as Yishan suggested. But I would distance myself from those people who are posting these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a way to protect ourselves. I like the idea about social media and podcast.
Yeah, I haven't had any big personal ones, but I feel like there are a lot of microaggressions that do happen, or they might be just statements that people say that I interpret as a microaggression. Like, and I know that people need work. There are some people out there that are like, whoa, you just need some work. But there was like one that I heard recently when I had gone into like a neighborhood in Seattle that's a little bit more well off, where before Seattle was put in like this lockdown, I say, because it's not really like super lockdown, and like I don't think it's like as serious as how Wuhan and like China would apply that. But it was very interesting because I walked into the bakery with my brother-in-law and my husband and kid, and there was someone there, like a white person, who had said, you know, I just feel really safe in my neighborhood. And like that specific neighborhood has a lot of white folks in there. It lacks a lot of minority folks. And it just, even though it may have been something that could have been innocent to that person, like it made me think a lot about, why does this person feel safe and why is this triggering me? Because in all the places that I've lived in places where the minority has always been the majority. So that I felt a lot of microaggressions from that. Also, what happens for me is I end up feeling really guilty, like going out. And I think imposter syndrome starts to kind of set in. And like another fact about me is that I'm in my second trimester of pregnancy. So I have to be a little bit more mindful of just like how I'm also kind of like going out and protecting myself and my family, because as like a pregnant person, you can't really take medication. So like when I wear a mask, I also look at the people around me in my neighborhood that don't have masks, and I feel guilty for wearing it. And I know that I shouldn't feel guilty because I'm trying to protect myself, and I am part of a vulnerable population at the moment, but I do feel guilty. And I think it's because maybe it comes from a place where I want to help more and I want to make sure that I can do more for the community, but I can't. Like, I have to think about like how I can put my own oxygen mask on first before I'm able to help other people. So that has come up quite a bit for me, and it's just a very, very uncomfortable feeling to have. And also I think about the way how I present myself too when I go out in the community. And just like what Melissa was saying, it's like, even if you cough, you have to kind of like second guess that. Even when you wear a mask, you have to second guess that. Or like there are different thoughts that are kind of lingering around it. And it's not because of like, wear a mask to keep yourself safe, but it's like, hi, I'm wearing a mask. And hi, I'm also Asian. And what type of things are you putting like in your head, or like what are you thinking about me as an Asian person, like trying to keep myself safe? So there's a lot of guilt that I personally feel when I'm walking around in public trying to make sure that I'm practicing social distancing and making sure that I'm practicing just like safe, you know, whatever practices. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely felt those too. For a while, I was very self-cautious about myself coughing, or when I had a brief flu, my nose was running a little bit. I feel like the urge to explain to other people, if there anyone around me, to explain, I don't think I got coronavirus. It's, I think, just a cold. But also like whether to wear a mask, when I feel definitely much more comfortable when I see everyone start wearing masks, or else I'm so standing out, not only uncomfortable and feel a little bit out of the place, but part of me also worried whether I'm gonna be attacked because as an Asian, right, you're the only one or one of the rare ones wearing a mask, because I heard so many things about that, especially several weeks ago.
I just want to share that. Yeah, I just want to share. I think Zars and Yishan gives really good examples of how we as Asian are affected by all these messages that's going on, whether it's microaggression or more of a COVID. So even when the both of you did not experience any physical threat or more COVID messages, you're talking about how or it affects you, it makes you second guess, it makes you feeling a lot more guilt, it makes you think a lot more when you are out in the general public, that if you think about, other folks don't have to think about it, only we Asians do, right? And it's interesting too, when I make calls to grocery store and when I offer these masks, I also sometimes just really curious what's going on in their mind, me as an Asian person going around with a mask myself and offering these things. But yeah, I think I'll talk a lot more about how to cope with it. But one thing's really small of what I coming out is this theme of whenever we encounter microaggression, or I should say whenever we encounter some things that are really making us very uncomfortable, we are really impacting negatively by this. We're still finding ourselves questioning if it's our problem, if we shouldn't be impacted by it, if we're overreacting. A big thing to keep reminding ourselves, and like I said, I'll talk more about it. Dr. Su in a really nice paper lately, to talk about what to do with racism. It's make the invisible visible, like acknowledge our experience, even if to the very end we don't feel comfortable saying this is racism for sure, at least acknowledge this is something that makes us uncomfortable, and that's okay. Like, this is something that we have to cope with. I think that's very important, instead of all holding it in and having to eat up all the guilt and the uncomfortableness ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, gonna say something?
Yeah, Melissa.
Oh, I was gonna say, actually, I see more and more other people, not only Asians, are wearing masks in stores. So definitely, I see a lot of other people are catching up. And I, maybe because of the place that I live and place I work, I live in Mountain View, which is the center of Google and the center of tech industries. And in tech industries, there are a lot of Asian workers. I mean, Chinese and Indians, right? Like, if we count Indians, they're also Asians. So maybe the environment that I am in, people are more kind of like, I rarely think about I'm Asian when I'm work, because maybe a lot of coworkers around me, they're Asians. But there are a lot of things that I kind of second guess and doubt myself, maybe are related to the fact that I'm Asian, or not, that I'm not American. Like, sometimes the joke that they're saying I don't get, maybe there are lots of like trivia things that are deep in the cultural roots that I don't quite understand or don't relate to, or a lot of the times to the extent of like work-related skills and ability, for example, presentation skills. And obviously, I always think, oh, the native speakers have like better chance of delivering it like succinctly, very eloquent, etc., etc. And looking around, a lot of my coworkers are from consultant background. They're like previous McKinsey, BCG, and you look at their resumes, they were like previously director of like planning or strategy of some sort. So I sometimes feel like, oh, I always kind of want to improve some aspects of myself to be more like eloquent, to be better at my work. That maybe to some extent that's related to the fact that I'm Asian, but maybe that's very implicit. That makes me think that maybe at some particular aspects I'm not as good as other people. but the way I deal with it is, I think everybody has something that they want to improve on, but it's a learning and improvement opportunity for us to work on. And I always believe if I make effort, I will see myself achieving it to be closer to who I want to be and make it better. And I think through a lot of trials and errors, I definitely have found a healthy balance of what I think who I am and what I think that's not part of me and I shouldn't even be trying. So for a lot of people who are struggling in this current situation, I'm just offering my tips from my own experience of living in the US for 6 years. At the very beginning, I also wanted to fit in very much. I wanted to be just like Americans and just want to be as good as them and understanding everything, laugh at them and have the humility as them, have the tell the same jokes. But really, I think what differentiate me and what sets me apart and what gets me to this job and what really makes me who I am and do my job well is really about who I am. And I would say after coming to the US, I have been Americanized to a lot of degree, to a lot of extent. But I think after 6 years, I also see the true values that I'm holding and what exactly is something I'm not gonna let go or something that I have tried, but I just will never change, right? So I think it's a self-personal journey that everybody has to go through, and everybody has to find a balance, and it has a lot of things to do with the environment that you're living with, the friends you're with, the close relationships that you're holding. But it is something that you have to go through and find your own balance, and nobody can tell you who you're going to be and to what extent the Americanness that you're gonna be. But hopefully everybody could find that balance soon. But until then, I think some anxiety, some anxiousness is okay. It is allowed. And if you have problems, go seek help. At least that's something everybody's encouraged, no matter which background you're from. Like seek help and seek psychologist help, therapist help. There are a lot of people who are there to help you. So that would be my kind of advice to people who are struggling right now.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it's a very personal journey for each of us to find the balance, find what it means to be Asian ourselves. To the earlier point, you all mentioned the self-compassion, compassion to others, to self, validate yourself, and radically accept things. A lot of good coping strategies. What some other coping strategies the audience you think can benefit from?
I can talk, but if Doris, yeah. Oh, I just feel bad because I feel like Doris haven't spoken and I've been speaking a lot. Yeah, I really, like I said earlier, I really like this Darwin Su. He's a professor in Columbia University that studies Asian American microaggression discrimination, and he has a recent paper that I really like that outlines a couple strategy that I like that I would like to share with folks. And he has 4 points, and his first one is make the invisible visible. So the way I understand it, it's like acknowledge your experience, like speak out about your experience and acknowledge that these are experiences that you feel uncomfortable about. The second one is disarm the microaggression or macroaggression. So I think by disarm, it's like taking action of what you can do, whether it's you can boycott it, you can report to you can report to your local police. So there's nonprofit organizations in the US that I can share the link with Yishan, and Yishan can share with others that you can report this experience when you have it. And the reason why it's because when you report it, that's when data analysts and can get together and figure out and can do investigation about it. So you want to be able to describe what is happening and to talk about it. The third one is, if you can, he points out that you can educate the offender. It's what he says, and which I like too, because I know that sometimes if we encounter violence, very aggression, we might, feel very like we can't respond to it right away. But also other times there are comments or things that we hear, whether it's from our friends or, people in the grocery store, that we're not really sure if they intended to make us feel uncomfortable or right, but maybe we feel like that's when we can educate them a little bit. And some points to educate, it's like we can start by giving a little bit empathy and letting them know the differences between impact and intent. So like, might not be what you intend to do, but when you say these things, the impact is it makes me, or it makes my community feel a certain way. So educate them about these things not being good things to say or to do. And the last one is to seek external intervention and support. So I think just like what Melissa said, so like find your support group, find people that you trust, that you can talk about this, go see professional help if you want. There's find your healing circle of what you can do to get it out of your system. On top of those four, I also want to add the last one also is to protect your safety, your physical safety. So I think sometimes think about your physical safeties can also make us feel a little bit more empowered and a little bit more game of sense of control, that we know if at worst physical violence or racism happens, that we have a way to cope with it. So these could include maybe like taking a class on self-defense and understand that if these things happens when you are out, what you can do. Learning some measures about what you can do, like Yishan said, get a pepper spray and learn how to use it. You can carry it out with you. Or another thing I heard, if you're at home and feel unsafe, what I heard that I like is you can carry your car keys with you, put it beside your bed when you go to bed if you don't feel safe. And because if something happens, if you click on the alarm and your car goes off, it will alarm neighbors and the offender as well. So just also like taking care, feeling a little bit safe about if things would happen, what you could do. I think it's also important. I think these are things I can share from my end.
Something that comes up for me is that I know that like sometimes I'm an anxious ball of emotions a lot of the times. So sometimes what helps for me is I need to do the opposite thing. So I think, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I do like to stay informed, but I think that has to come with parameters. So for example, it's like the most news that I can take in a day is listening to NPR Up First because it's so short. Like, I think it's only like 10, 15 minutes worth of stuff that's happening around the world. And that's like all the news that I can take for the day. Another thing too, kind of like what Melissa was saying, was if there's any negative stuff that I see on social media, I just unfriend or unfollow, because I just don't want to surround myself with things that tend to drain my energy, but rather I would want to spend time with people or like hobbies that tend to kind of like fill my energy and fill me with just a little bit more joy during this time where I feel that it can be really, really draining for me. So another thing that has happened during this time actually is that I've been becoming more aware of just my culture and how my culture would cope with things. So one thing that I've been doing is that I've been cooking a lot more and just cooking more cultural foods, cooking more Filipino food, but doing it in a sense where, and I know this sounds really silly, but like, I'm like, oh, if I wasn't like a nice fancy restaurant, and if I were to like engage in all these senses and all these smells and like really enjoy the way how like I chop things and like I play music that makes me feel like good, that kind of like helps me with the grounding part of like making sure that I'm staying in the moment. So I really enjoy cooking at the moment, and also since I kind of feel like I'm somewhat of an extrovert, I like to still connect with friends and family through Zoom. But sometimes, yeah, I get really like technology-fied because all the work that I do remotely is also on Zoom or like Microsoft Teams. And I just acknowledge that, okay, I have to take breaks. But I also try to find a bunch of like online classes that are free that might teach me like a new skill, whether it be dance or learning like different cooking recipes or just like different fun things. I tend to gravitate more towards that because, yeah, I feel like I need to set my own personal boundaries or more like emotional boundaries, just so that I can make sure that I feel safe and I can make sure that I can function well for just myself and my family.
Yeah, Zara, I hope it's okay to share. I think that she has a dance classes on Facebook.
Oh, cool.
For people of color, specifically POC. Is that right? Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Maybe Yishan could share that, and it's
Great. I want to follow. I want to learn dancing and find people who are like very active right now online. Yeah.
Sure. Well, it also brings me to my other point. Well, outside of doing like mental health stuff, I also perform and actually do burlesque. So that's my other like thing that I do on the side. And my burlesque persona is actually called Pinay Grigio, which is a play on like the word Filipina, which is like Pinay is like slang for Filipina, and then Grigio the wine. So my name is like Pinay Grigio, but I've created a class for called Community, which is, I was hoping that it was more for like BIPOC folks or like the Black, Indigenous, people of color folks to just like come in and like do a class. And since I've been doing it online, I've offered it for free because I think people just need to move. Like if they find it helpful to move in their homes or just do something that creates some type of energy or just some type of joy, I'm more than happy to do it for free. Like dance right now is not my primary source of income. And I think just the reward that you get from teaching dance and having other people engage in it is very empowering, because it's like, I think during this time, especially for like the BIPOC community, the arts is it can be expensive and not as accessible as you would hope it would be. So that's why I just kind of like offer this thing for free to folks. So if you would want to follow it, my Facebook page is facebook.com/Pinay Grigio, and Pinay Grigio is spelled PINAYGRIGIO, and the class is called Community. So I teach a dance combination every other week, and we just switch it up, and it's a lot of fun. But I plan on teaching until I can't dance anymore. I have to pop the child out. so that's what I do on the side outside from my therapy work.
That's awesome. I will put the link down in the show notes, so make sure people have the access to it. I think, yeah, I really like all these self-care ideas, balanced life from all of you. I hear very different aspects, and I think, the audience can listen, get inspired, and pick and choose what they like. They possibly can develop something themselves that really work for them to really help them cope with this situation. So at the end of the show, I'm wondering whether any of you have the last sentence or two you want to share, like your main point you want to share with the audience, want them to carry away with us after they walk away from the show.
I think for me, just to remind everyone that this is a not normal time. So we all are just coping with the best of what we can with whatever skills and tools that we have. So it's okay to not do things the normal way, not have our productivity maybe as high as usual, but really spend time to making sure that we're okay with our mental health as well, and acknowledge our feelings that's come up, and do the best that we can, and seek out resources when you need it, and connect with folks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, my takeaway is quite similar as well. Basically, just be yourself, do what you can, seek help, connect with your friends and families, and just self-care. Treat yourself well.
Yeah, mine is also very similar. I remember taking a class one time, and people just talking about just the pressure that they feel when things are supposed to look a certain way. And I remember the most important thing that the instructor said is, once you have to come to the realization that there are no rules as to like how things are supposed to look. So I think once you take that into heart and you realize that, yeah, there literally are no rules, anything goes, it feels a little bit more relaxing, and it feels more empowering for you to be like, yeah, screw it, like I'm just gonna live like life right now the way that like works for me. And yeah, I definitely think that self-care is important. Stay connected to folks, stay informed, but also like acknowledge like what you can take at that time, and be okay with like saying no to certain things. So yeah, I think that's helpful for me, just to kind of acknowledge our own emotional boundaries.
Okay, thank you all. This is wonderful. I learned a lot. I think hopefully the audience get a lot from our conversation, and help us all to think about how to live and how to survive, go through this tough time together on our own pace, with some support, with some care and love to ourselves and people around us. Yeah, thank you very much for coming to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you all.
Yeah, nice meeting you all.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you for watching our conversation. Hopefully you find the information helpful to you. Just to remind you, we are hosting some free online workshop with local San Mateo County to help those to cope with xenophobia. If you have some experience to share, or you have some mixed feelings about this phenomenon, please feel free to register for free and join us through Zoom every Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can find the registration link in our website at mindbodygarden.com. If you like our video or our podcast, please feel free to subscribe, to share, to like it. If you have any feedback you want us to hear and you want us to know, please feel free to leave us comments or email us. We will take your suggestions very seriously, and we will incorporate that in the future videos and audios. Thank you very much for your listening and watching, and hopefully to see you next time.
Yeah.